The WBC fires back at Eddie Hearns and Dillian White, Team White, over their pledge to, hurt the WBC, and Dillian White not getting a shot at Deontay Wilder. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button. Also, subscribe to the channel for the latest. Oh my gosh. Listen, new media, I told you, it's the place to be. And it's looking bad for old media. WBC did an interview. Mauricio Sulaiman, who's heading it up over there at the WBC, did an interview with Seconds Out. There it is. The link will be in the description. I have some pull quotes. Link in the description. And he's responding to Dillian White and Eddie Hearns' incessant claims that they're being treated mistreated, and they're threatening to sue at least Eddie Hearn, legal action. If Deontay Wilder fights Fury again, they're going to get in the way of it. All this type of stuff. I've talked about this very subject extensively. We'll go over what Mauricio Sulaiman, president of the WBC, said. And then, I'll bring it all together, give some of my thoughts. And in the Seconds Out interview, the WBC president, Sulaiman, responded. And he claps back. We gonna clap back. We gonna clap back. We gonna... WBC president says, quote, "I've spoken at length with Eddie Hearn and Dillian White's group, but unfortunately they have turned this into a media circus, which is highly regrettable because that influences the process. We have the highest respect for Dillian White. He is our number one contender, our silver champion, my friend, and a tremendous fighter. But to be insulted over and over again makes it very difficult to continue addressing a situation. We are going through a mediation process, but if they want to handle it through the press, it may change." Ooh. Quote, "We offered Dillian White a fight for the interim championship since last October, and they've been stalling. I'm a little bit frustrated that the British fans are only getting one side of the story. I've been getting insults on social media, trashing my father's reputation, insulting my family. We stand for justice. Our history is very clear, and we will do the just thing via the right process, via Seconds Out." Listen, I'm not saying I live in a realistic world. I'm not saying any of the sanctioning bodies are flawless or they're above it. However, you got to look at what's being said and put in consideration. Again, I'm not saying any of the sanctioning bodies make the right decision each and every time and no bullshit like that. But the reality is what Sulaiman is saying is actually what I've told you guys. You have Eddie Hearn on this crusade to gain stock back in the heavyweight division because his main cash cow, right? So you got to look at this. Dillian White is like he's a good fighter. He's like the junkyard dog, right? When Wilder was pressing Anthony Joshua, Eddie Hearn's cash cow, who did Eddie Hearn first suggest? He didn't say, okay, let's get the Joshua fight rocking, with Wilder. He instead said, guess what? Let's stall this out and have you fight Dillian White because you have to build up your UK profile and make it worth the fan. No one knows you in the UK, right? This is what Eddie Hearn threw out. So really, he hasn't provided Dillian White with a lot of the opportunities like he's making it out to be. He's used Dillian White more so as a pawn, because Dillian White has a willingness to fight anybody for the most part, except for Luis Ortiz. I didn't really see an eagerness there, but he knows that. He knows Dillian White's about it, and he's been using that. He's been using that angle. And now his cash cow, Anthony Joshua, just lost and is in a do or die rematch with Andy Ruiz. Now he's coming out talking about lawsuits and, we want our fair shake or we're going to take this to court. It's a bad look for Eddie Hearns right now. Bad look for Rematch Room. Katie Taylor really didn't win. She's allegedly undisputed. And she knows. She said, I want to redo it because I'm not satisfied with my performance. And now Eddie Hearns is, scrambling, trying to get the belts back that he just lost with Andy Ruiz. Dillian White is in a tough fight with Oscar Rivas. You know, Josh Kelly didn't look sensational. And this is the thing. You got a lot of people from the UK, like Suleiman is saying, who are attacking him, I'm sure, but they're not getting the full side of the story. Again, simple mathematics. If this was really about Dillian White getting his just due and getting a title shot, Wilder has one belt. He has one belt, excuse me. Wilder has one belt, the WBC belt. Why are they so hell-bent on going after the guy with one belt, but there's two rematch room fighters, Anthony Joshua and Dillian White, or at least have a case-by-case working relationship with Eddie Hearn. Dillian White has no problem appearing on DAZN, versus Wilder, who he has never fought on DAZN before. And when Gerald Miller was selected, I told you guys, why is Gerald Miller get the fight? This is before any failed drug test. Why is Gerald Miller getting the fight over Luis Ortiz? I knew it wasn't going to be Wilder or Fury, but why is he getting over Luis Ortiz? Why is he getting over Dillian White? I think those guys were more in line for a title shot. Luis Ortiz, because he held a good account of himself in his title shot, right? And Dillian White had a better 2018. He knocked out Lucas Brown, former champion. He fought a former champion in Joseph Parker, knocked him down 2 times, something Anthony Joshua didn't do. And then in December, he fought Derek Chisora, who I thought beat him 2 years prior, and he put that to bed, and he put Derek Chisora to bed. He knocked him out in a nice, sensational knockout, right? They came and allegedly wanted to give Dillian White the AJ fight, but they fell apart over money. They said Dillian White wanted too much money and they weren't willing to pay him. So the fight fell apart, and then they really used Dillian White. They used him to play against Gerald Miller. Gerald Miller was negotiating, and to keep Gerald Miller's asking price down, they used Dillian White as a pawn. Like, hey, Gerald Miller, we're offering you $6 million or whatever. We're offering you $6 million and some fights. Even if you lose, you're going to get $1.5 million per piece. If you don't go with this deal, we're not going to really up the ante much more, because we could just fight Dillian White. So they used it. They used him to barter with Gerald Miller with no intentions of fighting Dillian White. So all the people in the UK, Eddie Hearn, all the UK fans, stop it. If you really wanted Dillian White to get a title shot, he could have rematched the guy he beat in the amateurs, gave a tough fight to and lost to before Joshua was a champion. And he could have fought Joshua for 4 belts, including the IBO belt. So this is not about a title shot. It's about trying to get some power back. And I told you, Joshua already lost. He's in a do or die fight with Andy Ruiz. Andy Ruiz Jr. might have his number. Then threatening to sue the WBC wasn't really smart in my view, because it doesn't really get you anywhere, except for in bad terms, most likely with the WBC. As you hear, the WBC is like, man, they're making it hard to negotiate. They're making it hard to negotiate this stuff and talk about this. We've already talked to his team. We explained. We already offered him an eliminator. You have to understand, Eddie Hearn, y'all saying the master promoter, but look at these opportunities. Kell Brook never fought Amir Khan, and now Kell Brook is talking about possibly retiring, right? Fact. How come the Kell Brook Amir Khan, when Amir Khan signed to Rematch Room, the fight was never made? How come Kell Brook had failed fights with Brandon Rios, failed fights with Devin Alexander, failed fights with Diego Chavez? None of these fights materialized, right? Wilder Joshua never happened when they were both undefeated, right? None of these fights are happening. Dillian White couldn't get a title shot, challenge for a title against Wilder, and then they didn't give him the title shot versus AJ. None of these fights are happening. And you tell me this is not by design, right? The Chris Eubank Golovkin fight, when he was overseeing Eubank's career, how come the Eubank Jr. fight fell apart? How come Eddie Hearn can't get some of these fights across the board? Tevin Farmer versus Gervonta Tank Davis. How come he can't get none of these fights across the board? Doing a lot of wolfing, and, now they're in a position of desperation. Now it's, we want Dillian White to get a title shot. There's other titles outside of the WBC, and you were in negotiations allegedly for Joshua to fight Dillian White, and he still didn't get a title shot. And it broke up over money. Why can't you pay him what he feels he's worth? You know, I doubt he was asking for $60 million or something ridiculous. And the WBC is entirely correct. And we got the history to prove it. Look, I got the videos. The WBC ordered an eliminator. Let me see if you guys can see this. I made a video about it 1 year ago. I said lit. And it was talking about how the WBC ordered Dillian Whyte. Look. Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button. Also subscribe to the channel for the latest and greatest in boxing. If you want to become part of the gang, notification gang, please hit the bell icon. Shout out to the Super Chats, channel donations, the Venmo donations, and the Patreon family. We working. Now, more good news for the heavyweight division. You have Luis King Kong Ortiz, once beaten now. He lost to Deontay Wilder. You have Dillian Whyte, lost to Anthony Joshua. But since that, he's beaten Derek Chisora. He just knocked out Lucas Brown. And now the WBC, Mauricio Sulaiman, announced that he wants to make the fight between King Kong Ortiz, Luis Ortiz, and Dillian Whyte. And he's actually ordering that, right? Boom. And this is dope. This is dope. Listen to my words. Listen. Because between King Kong Ortiz, Luis Ortiz, and Dillian Whyte, and he's actually ordering them, right? And this is dope because Luis Ortiz and Dillian Whyte are both highly ranked with the WBC. Even though I think Luis Ortiz was rated number 3, he had a crack at Wilder, gave him a run for his money, still came up short. So I don't think he should drop. If you look at the picture of the heavyweight division. Look. New media, I told you, it's looking ugly for old media. I don't know. April 24th, 2018. Look at the date. Hopefully this is zoomed in it. April 24th, 2018. So the proof is already, the paper trail's already there. Yeah, no problem. Siri even told you. The paper trail's already there. The WBC, they ordered him to fight Luis Ortiz in an eliminator. He chose not to do it. You know, Dillian Whyte also had an eliminator with Kubrat Pulev, right? See, they keep talking about the WBC belt with Wilder, but they're not telling you the full picture. There was a purse bid for Dillian Whyte to fight Kubrat Pulev, right? The purse bid was won by Epic Sports and Entertainment. Eddie Hearn and Rematch Room got outbid by some random company called Epics, and then people are like, who's this? And then come to find out, it was some guy, a billionaire, or some, you know, person with the promotional team from Bulgaria, where Kubrat Pulev is from. You know, he's Bulgarian, right? And all of a sudden, they won the purse bid, so that means they, within the rules set, you know, within a certain date and time frame, they put up the money for the fight. It's an auction, you know, so they put up the money for the fight. They could stage the fight where they want within reason. They wanted to fight in Bulgaria. Guess what? Dillian Whyte pulled out of the purse bid. You know, he pulled out of the fight and chose not to fight Kubrat Pulev. So it's not even just with the WBC. That was with the WBO maybe, or WBA. Look it up. Google it. Google is your friend. So Dillian Whyte has had multiple opportunities to get to some type of a belt. He could have fought Kubrat Pulev, who is in line to fight Andy Ruiz. If you fast forward, since Andy Ruiz just beat Joshua, this is the guy that they're saying Andy Ruiz could get stripped unless he gets an exemption from if he rematches AJ and doesn't fight his mandatory, because he's been Joshua's mandatory. So Dillian Whyte, boom, right then and there, he could have fought Kubrat Pulev. Eddie Hearn didn't want to fight Dillian Whyte against Kubrat Pulev in Bulgaria. Look it up. And when, I don't know what's up with Gerald Miller now, but Gerald Miller was with Eddie Hearn and a Rematch Room as well. Same thing happened with him. Same thing. He was going to fight Kubrat Pulev, but then they lost and they didn't want to, you know, he pulled out and he was going to get a Joshua fight. So you see, back to Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte has had multiple opportunities to get to some kind of title shot. It's not his fault if Eddie Hearn is pulling him out of because he lost the purse bid and is pulling him out of the Kubrat Pulev. That would have been a shot to Ruiz or Joshua or whoever has those belts after the rematch. That would have been a direct shot. You know, same thing with the WBC. He's not Eddie Hearn and Dillian White trying to do things their own way. The WBC said fight Luis Ortiz. You guys that's a dope fight. You know, Wilder was probably tied up with Tyson Fury, which is a big fight they're not going to get away of. After, based on the controversy, they said we're ordering Wilder Fury 2. Fury did some cockamamie shit and went to ESPN and needed tune-ups all of a sudden now that he's with Top Rank. So Wilder fought his mandatory in Dominic Brazil, and just like his other mandatory, Bermane Stiverne 2, he knocked them both out. So Wilder's in the clear. The WBC said your number one mandatory is Dominic Brazil. They never said it was Dillian White. The only people that are saying it's Dillian White is Eddie Hearn and Dillian White. They keep saying, oh, we've been waiting 600 days, and this is what WBC is talking about. They're making it look sloppy because they're trying to negotiate, and, you know, they're losing a battle where they have no power. You don't think the WBC, who's been in the game long before Eddie Hearn, when Eddie Hearn was a kid, you know, Jose Sulaiman was in charge of the WBC. They was running shit. And, you know, when Roberto Duran's fighting Sugar Ray Leonard, the WBC existed. When that was happening, no one even knew who Eddie Hearn was in boxing. So they're in a battle that they can't really win because they don't have the power. I'm not the smartest brother in the world, but I do know that whoever's writing contracts and these stipulations, it pretty much affords the sanctioning bodies some wiggle room so they can justify their actions and overrule what, you know, contenders getting a shot in the event of what we believe to be the best in the best interest of boxing, if you will. You get what I'm saying? Like, Wilder wouldn't have had to fight Brazil because the WBC was ready to get out of the way for Wilder Fury 2. They're not going to rob the fans of a closure fight, a big money fight, and a fight that fans want to see, that are going to shell out cash for and settle that draw between Wilder and Fury to call for the WBC. So they have these little clauses and protective things written in the contract where they have the ultimate say. And I don't understand how Eddie Hearn's a promoter and he's telling the public this and he doesn't understand this. So the WBC, they don't have to. And the more you talk and the more you like lessen your situation and keep speaking out, they could probably make sure, you know, that Dillian White don't get an opportunity by creating exemptions and exceptions and stuff like that. So you're not really putting yourself in a position of power. Eddie Hearn keeps going at the WBC, talking about, oh, why did they let Lomachenko unify with Luke Campbell? This is bullshit. You know, why didn't Devin Haney, my fighter, get? Because Eddie Hearn's out here promising stuff he couldn't deliver. He told Devin Haney, most likely, because Devin Haney was doing interviews, that, hey, sign with me, I'm gonna get you a title shot. Watch this. You know, you're ranked number 2 with the WBC. Luke Campbell's ranked number 1. You know, we're gonna make this happen. But unbeknownst to him, Bob Arum, who's been in the game and has a strong relationship probably with all these sanctioning companies, right? He's like, nah, I'm trying to do a unification. That needs to supersede Devin Haney, you know, a contender, a fucking contender, as he calls it, getting a title shot. Lomachenko and Luke Campbell's big business, and we want to unify. We want to try to create a undisputed scenario. And the WBC went with that, sided with that, and now we're getting Luke Campbell and Lomachenko, which should be announced. So Eddie Hearn keeps going to the media and stuff, and he's not delivering the stuff for his fighters. Kell Brooks not fighting Amir Khan. You know, Dillian White's not getting a title shot either through Wilder or getting an AJ shot or fighting these eliminators like Luis Ortiz or fighting the purse bid and becoming Joshua's mandatory through Kubrat Pulev. They're not doing any of this. So once again, old media looks terrible, and we got it right on the money. And meanwhile, this hurts DAZN. DAZN just had this fight with Maris Bradis and Chris Glowowski, and the WBC said the day before, they said, we don't like how this is being organized. We're not authorizing our belt to be, you know, we're not putting our belt. This was supposed to be for 2 belts, and the fight was super horrendous. You know, and it was very farcical how it ended with Robert Byrd and the bells and stuff like that. Plus the WBC pulled the plug. Now I see why the WBC pulled the plug and didn't want sanction their belt for this fight. So it's looking real bad for DAZN and real bad for Eddie Hearn, because he keeps going against the grain, and it's a situation where he can't win. You know, the WBC is telling you, and they're saying it in a professional manner, but I know what this means. It says they have turned this into a media circus, meaning Team White, Dillian White, Eddie Hearn, which is highly regrettable because that influences the process. We are going through a mediation process, but if they want to handle it through the press, it may change. Bro, that doesn't sound good. You can say whatever you want, but that doesn't sound good, because exactly what I told you, Eddie Hearn, P. Diddy, any of your artists want to remain artists, don't want to worry about the executive producer oil in the video. Eddie Hearn's loving the camera too much. Bob Arum ain't doing this, you know? And then now, if Oscar Rivas beats Dillian White, the WBC will probably drop Dillian White several spaces or something and make sure, because you threatened to sue him and all this crazy shit, they might threaten, you know, some of your fighters' positioning and then reconsider, just because, you know, whether it's right or wrong, just because how you're acting. You know, I don't think you're in a position of power. You know, that's what I've been saying. So you guys can say whatever you want, but you're trying to punk the WBC and, you know, make them look bad, but it in turn is making you look bad, and it's not doing a service to your fighters, because ultimately they can sanction pretty much what the fuck they want to, and you could cry about it to the media, but I just don't think insulting them, like I've been saying, insulting them is going to be the way to resolve this. You know, you should handle this behind closed doors, not get in front of IFL TV cameras or UK cameras and then try to make them look bad. And now the Suleiman family is being harassed by radical fans jumping in the mix and don't know what the fuck's going on. I just, it's not a good look. And I don't think it draws Dillian White closer to any type of title shot. But beyond that, beyond just how it looks from the outside, there is Dillian White has not listened. His team has not listened to the eliminators. He didn't fight Kubrat Pulev to become Joshua's mandatory. They wanted, see, this is how I know Eddie Hearn did not think Joshua was going to lose to the people that he had been putting him in with, because they never anticipated. They just went around boxing like their shit don't stink. And now they're seeing like, fuck, okay, now who's our star? Or, man, I hope Joshua wins this rematch. It's looking bad, man. It's looking real bad. It's looking real bad. You know, and I never understood how they were playing this game, that really they're not going to win. You're not going to force the WBC. And you just doing this type of stuff, you're going to ensure that Dillian White probably has to wait longer. It's just the reality of it. Wilder just fought Dominic Breazeale. He's clear. So no matter what you say, threatening to sue, legal processes take a while. And beyond that, you have the burden of proof. You have to prove what you're saying. You have to prove that the WBC, which is a private organization, did something that goes against the, you know, the moralities or ethics of anything. And that's hard to prove in court. And I ain't passed the bar, but I know a little bit. How you going to prove that they did something wrong? They said that, like, man, see, y'all playing around with it. Watch this. Watch this. Watch how this is easy. This is, let's say I'm a judge, you know, Eric Molina, because I was at the fight, so I remember this. Eric Molina, Dominic Breazeale, WBC eliminator, right? Simple search. Right? Let's see. Let's click on this one. Oh, it would have an error, man. Anyway, I was at this fight. I'm trying to find a credible, because initially Wilder was supposed to fight Bermane Stiverne, pay him step aside. I mean, he's supposed to fight Luis Ortiz and Bermane Stiverne. Look, Wilder versus Tavern 2 results. Dominic Breazeale stops Eric Molina in WBC Eliminator. Told you. So how you gonna prove in court that Dillian Whyte has been wrong some kind of way, when the whole world knew that Dominic Breazeale, and this is old. This is when Wilder fought Stavern. Look, by Michael Woods. Look, November 4th, 2017. I think that's around the same time frame that Dillian Whyte became the #1 contender. They gave you an eliminator. They gave Dillian Whyte an eliminator with Luis Ortiz, and he didn't do it. Eric Molina and Dominic Breazeale fought an eliminator. It was understood, bro. Until Eddie Hearn and Dillian Whyte came out screaming, no, we got the silver belt. He fought an eliminator. I was at the fight. I had the program somewhere. Look, Dominic Breazeale stopped him. Barclays. This is in 2017. So I don't even think they have a case. And now the WBC is responding to it, saying they're making it a media circus. Listen, it doesn't sound good for Eddie Hearn and Dillian Whyte. And then once again, Eddie Hearn has to deliver these things for the fighter. How come we didn't get Kell Brook and Amir Khan? How come Dillian Whyte can't get no title shot, including a guy with more belts that's with Matchroom? He don't have the belts now, but I'm saying, how come Gerald Miller got the opportunity before Dillian Whyte? Because they were trying to protect Joshua. They were trying to put him in the fight of least resistance, or DAZN maybe told him to fight in America. So they were trying to map out the board how they wanted. And they didn't want a domestic level UK fight in America. So they didn't want a dangerous American debut with Dillian Whyte. So they rather put him in with Gerald Miller, who's coming off a Baghdad Dinu performance, right? Trying to protect Joshua. And then now when that didn't work and he still lost to a 5-week training camped Andy Ruiz, now he's trying to save face and get Dillian Whyte a shot and has to pick up the pieces with Anthony Joshua. They had not one, but at least 2 opportunities to make the Dillian Whyte rematch before the Gerald Miller fight or after Gerald Miller lost. When Gerald Miller failed the drug test, they could have made the fight. And there's an interview with Talk Sport, and Dillian Whyte said he brought it up. It's over. Dillian Whyte said after Gerald Miller failed the drug test, he was never offered the fight to Joshua. He was in the, so listen, just listen how bad this sounds. Listen how bad this sounds. Dillian Whyte and Gerald Miller were allegedly the guys who were going to get the fight. Dillian Whyte allegedly wanted too much money, right? He wanted too much money, and he said he was lowballed, but they said he wanted too much money, right? So they went with Gerald Miller. Gerald Miller is taken out of contention for the Joshua titles because he has all these drugs in his system and is revealed during a VADA testing or whatnot, right? So instead of going to the person you were already negotiating to fight, Dillian Whyte, and then bringing him in who's with Matchroom, or at least, has this slave trade contract or whatever Barry Hearn said, you can at least go with him and then pull him in as a complete understudy. You go with Andy Ruiz. You allegedly want Luis Ortiz. Why wouldn't you pick the person who is signed with you to some degree that you have a working relationship with, right? Why don't you pick them? Why would you pick Andy Ruiz? Because again, they didn't think Andy Ruiz would win. They didn't think he would win. Let me find this article. They didn't think he would win. That's the problem. So they pick Andy Ruiz because they know Dillian Whyte's going to give Joshua a tough fight because it's been proven. He beat him in the amateurs and he hurt him in the pros, right? And that should have been a complete and utter easy sub, but they didn't want to chance it. They didn't want Joshua's American debut with someone who could potentially upset him. Man, oh my gosh. And Dillian Whyte confirmed this to Talk Sport. I just don't know what the actual title of the article is. Dillian Whyte said he was never offered to fight after that. So he was in negotiations for before the fight. He was in negotiations to fight Joshua. But when Gerald Miller failed a drug test, you didn't think to bring in Dillian White? Come on, man. That doesn't even make sense. Offered Anthony Joshua. Let me see if I can find it. Bow, got it. Oh, hold on. That's not the Talk Sport article. Oh, here it is, I think. Yeah, I think this is it. See, you guys can research all this yourself. The real deal. Okay, so I was looking at it, but I passed it up. Dillian White column, the WBC are protecting Wilder. Of course, he's saying that. And I had 0 offers to fight Anthony Joshua in New York. So in this article, exclusive interview, Dillian White, look, Anthony Joshua never offered to fight me in New York. Anthony Joshua claimed that he made offers to just about every heavyweight going this year, including myself. Look, I could say right now on my left hand, AJ and Eddie Hearn did not make me an offer for the fight in New York after Gerald Miller's failed drugs test. It was me that offered to step in and take the fight. AJ had been in 10 weeks of VADA testing. I had already been training for 5 weeks. So I said, I've got enough time to get myself ready and I'll take the shot, right? I don't understand why they would not tell the truth. There was a phone call with Eddie where I said I would jump in to face Joshua, and Eddie couldn't have changed the subject quicker. He didn't want to know. I don't care what anyone says. No offers have been made to me. Joshua has my number. So Dillian White already told you. So you want people to feel sorry for because he's not getting the WBC and he was never doing the eliminator. He didn't become the mandatory. Eddie Hearn managed Dillian White like this. He pulled him out of the Kubrat Pulev mandatory. So he would have been the Andy Ruiz or Joshua 2 winners mandatory. And you want me to feel sorry that Dillian White is not getting the title shot, but he could have already got a title shot. He could have stepped up after Miller failed the drug test or before that. He should have been selected before Miller. So it's not about, well, we want Dillian White to get a title shot, and you guys are proving that, because if you wanted him to get a title shot so bad, he should have fought Anthony Joshua before Gerald Miller was even mentioned as the opponent. Or when Miller failed the drug test, you should have put Dillian White in there instead of Andy Ruiz. Now, even if Dillian White would have knocked out Joshua in New York, it's no worse than Ruiz knocking him out and dropping him 4 times. So Eddie Hearn is to blame for all this, and Barry Hearn in Rematch Room, because they let an Al Heyman fighter do the upset instead of one of their own who was worthy of it. Andy Ruiz just fought Demon Trinco. Dillian White was taking a tough schedule, fighting Lucas Brown, who has some power, former champion, Joseph Parker, power, former champion, hurt him in the 12th round, dropped him, right? And then Derek Chisora, who already gave him a tough fight. And they thought Andy Ruiz would get beat the fuck up, which he didn't. And that's why they brought him on, because they thought he was less of a threat, and he turned out to be equal threat or greater threat. Actually a greater threat, because Dillian White has lost to Joshua before. Andy Ruiz, first time he fought him, he stops him. So, Eddie Hearn's to blame for all this, because they should have gave Dillian White that opportunity, but they didn't want a dangerous fight like that for Joshua to protect the cash cow. And then now they let the belts escape, and you let Andy Ruiz and Al Heyman fighter steal your thunder. Now you're trying to get mad at the WBC and all types of stuff. And the WBC is basically checking Rematch Room. Looking ugly. New media. So if you enjoyed this video and want more content like this on the channel, you can show your appreciation by going to the PayPal donate button or the YouTube support button. And you can donate any amount that you feel is equivalent to the value of this video. Much more to come. Thank you guys for your support. Boxing Ego, the future of boxing.